Hey folks, Dr. Rob Jones here, heydrrob.com. My good friend Lisa, following her journey from pain and dysfunction and really bad back issues to great function and some strength now and no pain. So again, previous videos we talked about stability, mobility, okay? From the ground up, we talked about ankle mobility. Now, Lisa always had good ankle mobility, so we didn't really need to do anything there. And her knees were good, so we didn't need to do anything there. Let's turn you that way. Just a quick recap. Because of her high level rowing, she was unstable through here, moving too much. Disc bulges here, moving too much. Thoracic kyphosis naturally, immobile, not moving enough, and then stiffness through the glutes and hips and deep hip rotator, so not moving enough. So that stability mobility continuum was reversed. So if you want to go back and watch those previous videos, we're going to talk today about how we put it all together, okay? So if you notice now, Lisa's got her shoes off, and we did that very distinctly because if you are going to start pulling from the ground, you can see we've got a kettlebell and a block set up here because she wanted to deadlift. And this is where we started because she was terrified. I don't have a 15-pound kettlebell. This is a 20. She didn't even want to do the 15-pounder because she was so afraid, right?
I was terrified of it.
But I knew she was capable. We just had to get her mind around it. So what we started with was intra-abdominal pressure, thoracic mobility so she could drop into the pose and keep her chest up. And then we talked about accessing her glutes and using good glute rotation, good hip rotation with the glutes to basically hip hinge so we could start picking things up. And you had mentioned how that really tying in intra-abdominal pressure with your glutes was a huge epiphany for you.
That was money.
Yeah.
Right there.
So basically, let's talk about what the foot does when you're actually lifting something, and even when you're balancing. So really, the foot structure is pretty important. It's kind of like a hand. My good friend Chad Richards always talks about monkey foot. Okay, like a monkey grabbing a branch. Okay, and swinging around. We really want to make sure we have good translation, and that's why when I first saw Lisa in these Injinji socks, I thought she was crazy. I thought they were the dumbest thing I've ever seen, but I wear nothing but these Injinji socks now because they're so good at allowing your toes to spread, which spreads your metatarsals so you can get those intrinsic muscles of your foot, which are really in essence the core muscles of the foot, so you can grab the ground, okay? When you are grabbing the ground, you're translating force. It gives you a stable platform so you can hinge your knee and ankle and hip so you can create good movement. So what we did after we figured out intra-abdominal pressure and after we figured out good thoracic position and good hip mobility, we talked about monkey foot, okay? So widen your stance just a little bit. What you will see a lot of people do when they lift is the big toe will come up. If you want to lose your balance, pick up your big toe, okay? You really need that big toe and the rest of your toes spread and translated up to this metatarsal phalangeal joint really stuck into the ground because that's your anchor. Now the arch of the foot is going to actually get a nice contraction to hold you up so you've got a nice stable platform through your heel and through the forefoot. And that's going to translate force into the ground so that force can come back up so you're nice and stable. So once we've mastered that, and it was really just simply working on, she already had pretty good foot mechanics because of these awesome socks and she'd been practicing it, but we talk about spreading the toes, okay, monkey footing the ground, and then basically practicing, maybe let's weight your right foot and step back with your left foot. And let's just practice that little bit of a hip airplane standing. So we're tying in intra-abdominal pressure, foot translation, hip hinge mobility, hip hinge motion to capture the glutes. So now that extremity is translated right into the ground with stability. Because if we go to lift something and that foot starts coming up, the whole system's going to go out of whack, okay? So let's do a little bit on the other side now. So again, let's monkey foot the ground. Okay, we don't want to claw at the ground because we lose stability if we're just on the edge of the toes. We want the toes flat. And we want a little bit, you should feel actually some pretty good arch contraction here. Big toe down, let's get some intra-abdominal pressure. Now let's just do a little standing airplane. So belly button towards your hip, open and close. Okay, now you're training the mechanism to actually translate back into the ground. Okay, once we've got that, and once we've tied in all these other mechanisms, we're ready to pick something up. Now, the reason we did this from a block, and she's just anxious, right, to jump in there. You should have seen her 3 months ago. She was
Like,
terrified.
no.
Okay, so what we want to do is start up a little bit higher so there's a little bit less risk to the lower back, because the deeper you go, basically there's more risk for injury because of some of the mechanisms we talked about, okay? Eventually we did have her pulling from the ground, and we will today, but we always want to hedge it a little bit, okay? So let's go through our hinge mechanics, okay? So we know we have to have good intra-abdominal pressure. We know we want to monkey foot the ground. Thank you, Chad Richards. We want to hip hinge back, okay? Now the important thing here is you can see Lisa's already done it. She's aiming her hands towards that kettlebell. Now if you look at her setup, let's actually go to the side here. So let's have you walk around. Now, I've instructed her anytime she picks anything up to make sure her center of gravity, which is about her belly button, is over the object she's going to pick up. Step back about 6 inches. You'll see a lot of people try to pick things up from further out here. Now when you do that, there's more load being pulled forward, and there's a lot more shear stress to the spine. If you get that load underneath your belly button and it's inside your base of support, now that load is right in the center of your body and you have less shear to the lumbar spine. That's why my friend Zach Mars created the Mars bar. If you haven't seen that thing, check it out. It's the best bar on the market. The Mars bar puts the load right in the center of your body, just like a trap bar does if you're in a trap bar deadlift. It puts the load right in the center of your body. Now we're going to do this lift just like the Mars bar or just like the trap bar deadlift. Lisa's going to basically go through her checklist, okay? I don't ever let her do 1 rep without going through her checklist. So it always starts with intra-abdominal pressure. Then we initiate with a hip hinge. We make sure we're monkey foot in the ground. She's going to slide her hands inside her legs. Now the reason we do this is because, actually let's turn her around so we're facing this way. And go ahead and do that abduction mechanism. The reason I have her slide her arms inside her legs is she can push her femur into abduction, which is apart, and that loads glute medius, which is the side butt muscle, and that adds an extra measure of pelvic stability. Now what we do is we go ahead and grab that kettlebell, get nice intra-abdominal pressure, we make sure we're equal through the foot, and we push the knees out a little bit more to get lots of glute, and then we drive up, we squeeze the butt at the top. Now we're at a good stacked up mechanism. Now when we set it down, we just reverse what we just did. Intra-abdominal pressure, monkey foot the ground, hips back, start pushing your knees to the side, set it down. Come back up. Now we got a successful lift with no pain. Okay, now the weaker you are, we're going to work at that, okay? We're going to keep it on the block. If you have pain or you feel a stretch in your back here when you get to the bottom of that motion, you don't have enough stability, or excuse me, you don't have enough mobility in your hips yet. You're moving your spine if you feel that stretch. So you may need to raise this up a little bit higher, okay? Once I assessed Lisa had really good hip mobility here, we actually lowered this down the very next week, okay? So we're gonna take this box out of here, and we're gonna set that down. Now, to prep, we did a little extra hip mobility and a little bit of extra kneeling hip airplane on the ground to make sure she was good and mobile through here, because she has no window that her spine is going to let her mess up, okay? If we screw up 1 rep, she's down, okay? Now, at the time she's better now. She's got way more resilience in her now. But at the time, we couldn't mess around, so I had to make sure her hips were good and mobile. So this is what we did. We went through the checklist. We got belly button over the handle. We went intra-abdominal pressure. We hip hinged back. Arms came down inside the legs. We pushed the knees apart. And before I let her lift this, I said, do you have any pain or do you feel any stretch? And she said no. And I said, pick it up then. Okay? Now, as we lower it down, we're going to intra-abdominal pressure, monkey foot. Slide those forearms between your knees, knees to the side, and we set it down. There you go. And she did that, and of course she jumped up and down, and we high-fived and hugged, and she was so thrilled. And that was what got us to the point where if you watch some of our Instagram videos and some of the YouTube videos, she's deadlifting over 100 pounds from the ground now because she has those mechanics. And we did it in a step-by-step, methodical approach that utilized the stability mobility continuum without anything breaking down, and we were really fervent about making sure that not one of those systems was down. If one of those systems was down, she was not picking this up from the ground, okay, because she did not have the resilience. But we know her foot was stable, she was monkey foot in the ground, she could feel her glute medius, she could feel the stretch back here, she had good thoracic extension, and she had good intra-abdominal pressure, she was ready to go. So there you go. You
And
follow.
every single rep makes me super happy. I still dance every time I do it.
It's actually pretty funny. When she makes a new PR, she jumps around and smiles. And now you can do this too. You just have to go through the checklist. Okay, you just have to make sure you are ready and you can feel this. And don't try to be a world beater right away. Let's start small. Okay, start small and get big, and it will come, and you will get there, and you will be pain free. So I hope you like that. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like, follow us on the socials at Hey Dr. Rob and at Hey Lisa Allen Fitness, not Hey Lisa Allen, at
Lisa Allen Fitness.
There you go. Okay, and until next time, don't forget to protect your back.